So our top story this morning, divisions within government over migration show no sign of abating. Appearing in the Commons yesterday, the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, has been accused of breaching collective cabinet responsibility after blasting his own government's inability to cut net migration.
So serious stuff. His comments come as a number of Conservative MPs are frustrated by the growing migration levels after figures last week revealed net migration hit a record high last year.
Well, let's get some analysis on all of this from our political correspondent, Katherine Forster. Good morning to you, Katherine. I've been reading for a few days he's on resignation watch. I wonder if he might be sacked after some of these comments as well. But he's certainly tapped into a particular wing of the party. Now that Suella Braverman has gone, really trying to drum home the point that he's being blocked, as he puts it, from doing what he wants to do to try and cut migration.
Yes, the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, is certainly sailing rather close to the wind, isn't he, with these comments? He was considered very close to Rishi Sunak. He was a big ally. When he was brought in underneath Suella Braverman, it was basically that he would sort of keep her in check. But many people seem to think that he's gone over to the other side, if you like, in that he seems to genuinely be deeply, deeply concerned about the levels of net migration. And let's face it, it's not surprising, is it? 750,000 last year. That number is completely and utterly unprecedented, and this from a Conservative government that has spent 13 years promising to get it down for many years to the tens of thousands, and in 2019 below what it was then, which was under 250,000. So speaking in the House of Commons yesterday, he was asked if a package of measures to bring down net migration would be brought in before Christmas. And he said, well, if I'd had my way, I would have had measures brought in before last Christmas. So there's many, many Conservative MPs openly unhappy on the backbenches, and clearly divisions within the cabinet as well. They are worried that this is going to hurt them significantly at the upcoming general election. And of course, we hear all the time, don't we, about stop the boats, small boats. Those numbers are going down about a third. There's been huge attention on that. But when you look at the numbers, about 45,000 crossing illegally in a year, as against 750,000, you do wonder whether legal migration isn't in fact going to be a much bigger issue for voters.
They have the choice to say no to legal migration. So therefore, Katherine, we're in a situation where some part of government says, look, we need these people, against, I don't know whether that's the Treasury against the Home Office or whatever, but how can we say you've got to keep 750,000 legal migrants down when we're only too willing to give them passports to get into the country?
Well, yes, this is entirely of the government's own making. Before Brexit, when they were not able to control migration from the EU, they could say, this is beyond control, we'll take back control with Brexit. These numbers are directly because of choices the government is making, and it's basically the Home Office versus everybody else. The Treasury likes the money that comes in from workers coming into the country. The health sector likes the workers coming in, desperately needed to work in social care and in the NHS. The Education Secretary likes all the foreign students coming in. So yes, these are choices that are being made, but certainly earlier in the year, Rishi Sunak announced a clamp down on dependents coming with students. It's likely that they will clamp down now on dependents coming with care workers. It's likely that the minimum salary you have to earn to come will go up significantly, perhaps to 35,000. It's 26 at the moment. Possibly a cap. But of course, it's very difficult because many of these workers are desperately needed. Meanwhile, we've got 5 million people in Britain sitting on out-of-work benefits, and many people saying, well, why aren't we trying to get our own people back into work rather than just shipping them in from abroad?
Although, the breakdown of the numbers, it's 750,000, but the vast, vast majority are students, 643,000 of those. That should be easy enough. Why do we need to import students? Surely we've got enough of our own wanting to go to university.
They're only a temporary problem, Katherine, because they're only going to be here 3, 4, 5 years, one would imagine. So why are they that problematic?
Well, they just add to the overall numbers, and the numbers of foreign students in universities has gone up dramatically in recent years. But of course, the reason the education department loves them, the universities love them, is because they often pay around double in tuition fees what UK students pay. So it's financially really in the universities' interest. But of course, the thing is, 750,000 more people, all the people need housing, even within the university sector. There's now huge problems in that universities often don't have accommodation to put up all these students, and you often have the ridiculous situation of students going to university in one city and having to live somewhere entirely different. So there's a lack of infrastructure. Really, if you're going to have these numbers, you've got to have the housing, you've got to have the healthcare, you've got to have everything needed. So really difficult decisions coming for the government.
Katherine, thank you very much indeed. This is going to be a great talking point for our viewers and listeners today. I was in Manchester at the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And I can tell you, I have never, I mean, I used to live in Manchester in the 80s into the 90s. And now going back to it, I don't recognise it at all. It is full of apartments, full of flats, and I mean full. There are tower blocks absolutely everywhere. Now, are these students? A lot of people say they're Chinese students in particular who buy into these apartment blocks and whatever. But how on earth, who are all these people in Manchester, and why are they living in, one-bedroom apartments, two-bedroom apartments? What do they work at? Where did they go? Manchester, I'm saying this, you might be looking at me saying, what's he going on about?
No, not
here?
at all.
But the landscape of Manchester, the visual landscape,
dramatically
completely
changed. Even the town I grew up in, Woking in Surrey, now it has tower blocks. It's got huge, tower blocks. But, the number, 750,000 people, is equivalent to a new city of Glasgow or a new city of Cambridge each year. So that's why these big cities and towns are suddenly expanding upwards, because obviously there's a limit to how far they can go out with the green belt. It is a problem, but it certainly seems to me that the students is an issue. I know that the government are bringing in this limit from January on the dependents that come. I mean, it seems crazy that these students can be coming from Nigeria and bring their 3 children and husband and that be fine.
What I'm going to say is this. Let's take the care sector as an example. Our care sector could not work in this country without these people. And this is not me or Isabel sitting saying, oh, you shouldn't let them in. We're letting them in for a reason. We're letting them in because A, they're needed, B, nobody here wants to do the job as well. So what are you going to do if you suddenly say, all you people from around the world cannot come to this country? They're doing jobs that people don't want to do. So it's okay saying there's 5 million people unemployed in the country. Why don't we get them into the jobs? They don't want to work in those areas, which is
Well, we have to ask ourselves, what is the acceptable number? Labour seems to think 200,000 or so. Well, if 200,000 is the cap, you've got care workers at 101,000 and nurses at 23,000. So you're still well under that 200,000 there, and you've got those two sectors covered. And then you can have your remaining 70,000 or whatever it is of students. It just seems obvious to me that this is the problem, is the students. But then would our universities suffer if we clamp down on that valuable, sort of commodity?
Well, I don't think so.
Students?
I think our universities should be for our people. I don't think they're necessarily for people all around the world. However, I remember under the Blair government, there was very much an open door as regards migration, and the theory was that the more people they let in from around the world, the more likely they were to vote Labour, the more likely they were to skew the voting patterns off the country. And it was that part of the problem? Is that part of the problem? But you've got obviously the Treasury here saying, and commercialism winning, saying, we need people to fuel the economy and to work in these areas, or else we'll sink.
No growth,
And then you've got the Home Office, whatever, saying, well, why are we bringing everybody in? But then the Home Office grants the licences for people to come in.
No, it's a huge tension. You want growth, but you don't want immigration. Well, then how are you going to square that circle?